DotFriedRice is a way for you to very quickly set up your computer. It does have quite a few opinions, but it's highly customizable, and it comes in two main flavors. The first one is the full desktop environment. That's what we see here. And in this video, we're going to be demoing this. If you're using Arch Linux, that could be vanilla Arch or any Arch-based distro like CachyOS, that will be compatible. It sets up niri, Waybar, Waka, Mako, and all sorts of different things that we're going to cover in this video. But if you just want the command line tools, then it's going to be compatible with even more. You could be running any Arch Linux distro if you want, but also it's compatible with Debian, Ubuntu, any Debian-based distro, as well as macOS. Even if you're using Windows with WSL2, everything will just work. So that could be useful if you want to set up things like tmux and zshell, neovim, all sorts of different command line tools. Even if you're running Arch Linux as well, you can choose just to have the command line version if you want. This is a set of all sorts of different scripts and configurations. It used to be my .files. I renamed the repo to .friedrice. I think it was a really funny name. I was just walking the other day and I was like, you know what? Wouldn't it be cool to name it .friedrice? And I think it also sets the stage for just moving forward in the future, right? If it were named .files, that literally could be maybe 3 config files and that's it. But in this case here, there is an install script to get everything up and running in a couple of minutes here just by running one command. We're not going to spend a whole lot here in the README file, but it's there. I just want to let you know that all the stuff is documented here. And, this is not a brand new project. It's been around for around 8 years now because I've always been super passionate about using the command line and setting up dev environments and all sorts of things like that. And I had all the command line stuff set up for quite some years now. I don't know, there may be 4 or 5 years for the install script with theming and all that. But when I switched over to native Linux around 6 months ago, yeah, it made sense to basically modify this to now support a desktop environment. I'm currently running this on my main desktop machine here, as well as a personal travel laptop. And also for the command line version things, I also have a company issued MacBook where I have all that running there too. So with that said, let's go over all sorts of different things about this desktop environment. Along the way, we'll go over some of the command line things too. And near the end of the video, we will do a fresh installation on a brand new Arch installation in case you just want to see how things are set up here when you run one command. But actually, it's kind of funny because I did a whole 30-minute video on what niri is and demoed all sorts of different things around that one. And I don't want to spend a whole 30 minutes here going over everything, but if this is brand new to you, niri is a scrolling tiling window compositor for Wayland. So what does that mean? So here I just launched something like a terminal here. This is Ghosty on the left-hand side. And if I wanted to open up a browser here, I just open that to the right. Now, don't worry about what hotkeys I'm using here. It's all in the configuration file. We'll go over how you can explore some of that in a bit here. But this looks like a normal tiler, right? I can use my mouse to click. I can use keyboard shortcuts. But if I were to open up a third window, with a typical tiler, a third window might load down here in the bottom right. Or, depending on how you have your setup, maybe you have, something like a different stack where only things go here, only things go here, etc. But with niri, it's kind of interesting. Look, check it out. I'm going to have this focused on the left hand, but if I open up Thunar here, file manager, which is all configured out of the box here with GTK theming, notice how it just replaced where Firefox was. But Firefox didn't disappear off the face of the earth. It didn't get closed. All I need to do here is scroll to the right, and there it is. So niri is facilitating that. For example, I can just open up another terminal to the right of this one, and now I can suddenly scroll between all these windows freely. And this is really nice, right? Mentally, you can kind of think about having one big physical desk with a whole bunch of different pieces of paper, and now you're just like moving to the right, moving to the left. You have an infinite horizontal plane. But you can also tile things quite easily manually. For example, I can another hotkey here and bring Thunar over here, so now these things are tiled, and then again, I can freely go to left and right as I please here. I can also, choose to tile this one as well. Now, this starts to get a little bit small because really, in my opinion, that's what starts to happen once you start opening a couple of different things. Then you can also put these into tab groups. For example, mod T would do that, and now we have this little tab group here, and then we can also use hotkeys to flip between them, basically at your discretion. You can pop them out of tabs. You can do all sorts of great things. And there's also workspaces too. For example, right now I'm on workspace 1, but niri by default will start dynamically allocating empty workspaces as you start using them. For example, if I open up a terminal here, maybe I can center that window here, run a little bit of fast fetch. Why not? So here, now I can scroll up to go back to where I was before, or scroll down here to this second workspace. And now you can see niri even spawn an empty third one here. And if you prefer having named workspaces, maybe you like to have a browser on one workspace, or maybe you have media stuff on another, you could totally use named workspaces too with niri as well. But yeah, as you start opening more and more things here, you might be thinking like, well, wouldn't it get confusing to understand where all of my stuff is? So niri has this really, really nice overview here that is interactive, by the way. Like here, you can kind of get an overview of all the different workspaces you have, all the different windows you have open here. But check it out. If I wanted to take Firefox here, just drag it over and pop it into the second workspace in the middle, you can drag and drop, and there it is. Also, this drag drop behavior works here too. You can see these little hot zones here where you can drop stuff, and then you can kind of just use the mouse to drag things around as needed, which is really, really nice. So going back to the overview, yeah, there it is here. You can see even scrolls over to the right. As you start having things here, you can click into it, and there it is. And There's even more ways to find out what's open and switching over to different windows because, even if you're on one workspace like this with a couple of windows open, it is kind of nice just to be able to see, can I just switch to something very quickly? So maybe that will introduce us to another tool here, which is Walker, which is a general purpose application launcher, but it does a lot more than just launching applications. For example, I'm going to hit Mod W right now, and this is going to launch Walker. And look at this, it's showing us all the niri windows that we have open, and I can choose to just left click into that. It's going to focus Firefox over here, or maybe I'll just go down here to one of the Thunar windows, hit enter, and there it is. And what's really cool about this one too is, I can just also fuzzy search here like Firefox or something like that. And then there it is again, focused on the left. So this is a really, really, really quick way for you to be able to see, hey, where's all my windows at? And then how can I switch to them? And if you don't want to use that, or maybe you're used to using Alt Tab, well, Niri has Alt Tab here as well. You can see I'm tabbing through everything. Actually, near the very end there, you might have saw OBS. That's actually running on a second monitor here. Niri's Alt Tab also supports being able to filter this stuff out. So if I just do O here to filter out the other monitor so we only see what's on this monitor, you can totally do that. Or maybe you want to hit A there to go back to all of them, or maybe W for just this one workspace here in case you have a lot of things open with a lot of different workspaces. So yeah, you could just release that to get back to here. So yeah, very, very easy and very, very fast to switch to whatever you want. Now, one really awesome feature of Alt Tab here with Niri is, let's say that I'm in this terminal doing some stuff, right? And I can very quickly just tap Alt Tab very fast. And now it bounced me back to the last place that I was, even if it's in a different workspace. So that is really nice. It's almost like using, CD dash on the command line here, where you can kind of, flip between two different windows very quickly here, just basically going back and forth. I love that feature. I use it all the time. So that's enough for Niri for now. There's a whole lot more. I can leave a link in the description for that much more in-depth video. And along the way, we will see some configuration with Niri here too. But let's go back to Walker just a little bit. So going back to Walker here, if I jump over here and just do another hotkey here, which is going to be mod space, this is going to launch Walker in its default state, which allows you to open up applications quickly. For example, if I wanted to open up Firefox like that, I can totally do that. Or you can use a global hotkey. Again, we're going to go over a whole bunch of different things. But yeah, this is really nice, right? Gives you a list of all the different applications that you have. Here's Hollow Knight Silksong. Amazing game, by the way. It's not going to install that for you. I just installed that manually. But yeah, there's Kden Live, there's all sorts of different things. I don't want to get too distracted with a list of all the other different applications. I feel like we can hit that up in a little bit later. But yeah, this is the main functionality of Walker. Just very quickly open up whatever application that you want if it's not bound to a global hotkey, or maybe you don't want to run it in a terminal directly. But Walker is much more than just launching applications and even finding windows. By the way, this is a built-in module with Walker. But yeah, there's a lot of other things too. For example, you hit the semicolon here, and suddenly you have a calculator here. So, I've done some calculations here in the past, which saves some history here. But if I just wanted to add something like, 20 plus 30 divided by 2 or whatever, there it is. And you get the result here. You can hit enter on top of that, and that is going to copy it to your clipboard. Could be really nice doing some basic math here. You can even do some conversions too, like Fahrenheit to Celsius and all sorts of different things that libcalc supports, which is quite awesome. So let's go back to here. There's even a lot more things we can do here too. Like for example, if you want to just search for some emojis here, you can do some smiling face thing here and find that. There's all sorts of different things here to search from. But yeah, let's go over here. Maybe some of the more things here if you even want to check it out. One really cool thing too is, there's a web search here. So for example, if I just do hello world, that is going to open up a browser. We actually already have a browser open here, and there is the hello world, which is pretty cool. Again, very quick access to doing common things that you want to do. And going back to here, there's a whole lot more as well. I'm not going to go over every single one of them here, but they're all here if you want to go and play with them. One really nice one is Niri Actions. We'll get to that in a second here. But an even nicer one, or maybe comparably nice, is this clipboard manager. For example, we just launched this hello world here. Maybe I'll just copy that to my clipboard, right? Let's go back to an empty screen just so less distractions there. But if I open up Walker again, go here and go to the clipboard, which is another shortcut, by the way, you can just hit colon instead. I'm kind of just using semicolon to give you a list of all the different things. Actually, it gets even better because there's a global hotkey for this one. If you do mod V, that is going to open up the multi-clipboard manager by Walker, which will then keep tabs on all the different things that you've copied to your clipboard, including text, including images here, and you can fuzzy match them if you want. You can show images if they're there, not images if they're not there. You can delete them, you can clear them, you can pin them, you can edit them. You can do a lot of great things. So for example, maybe let me take a screenshot of like maybe just the middle here. And I've done a whole entire video around Sadi in the past. It's a 20-minute video going over all the different features, but this is a great way just to take a screenshot and you can start drawing on here if you want. You can grab some arrows there if you want. You can always always just, even annotate stuff as needed here. And, if you hit this icon or hit Control C, that's going to copy it to your clipboard. If you hit Control S or you click this icon here, that is going to save it to disk. So it's up to you on which method that you want to do. Personally, I find that I want to copy to my clipboard pretty often because, sites like GitHub or Twitter or whatever, typically you can just paste an image in there. But if you do want to save it to disk, then it'll save it there right away. And then you can do all sorts of different things too, after that, if you need to do it for whatever you need to do. But I just wanted to go here to copy that to my clipboard to show you that if I do Control V here, Mod V, then it is going to show me a preview here of the image that was just in my clipboard a second ago. So if I go back to here, there's a hello world one, we can just do a search for true or something like that. And then, there's just the one there. And again, you can now do these little toggles here, like Control I to only show images, or maybe just show all, or just only images, or only text, or all, or basically whatever you want there. You can even stop tracking stuff here, which is pretty nice. Actually, this is pretty interesting because I do use a password manager called KeePass. Don't want to open that one on video just because, it's going to show all sorts of different things. It won't show all my passwords, but it will show all the different sites that I have. But I do want to go over one thing that's kind of interesting. So if we go and take a look here and run pw, this is a little shell script that I wrote here that will generate a password here, a random password. This has now been generated. And if we take a look here and open up the multi-clipboard tool, notice how that string was not added to the clipboard manager. And just to be a little bit more clear on this one, let me just go and maybe echo this one out manually like this. Let's see if that will work because there maybe is some crazy characters in there for shell. Let me do single quotes actually just to be a little bit better there. But then also, let's just get rid of this single quote. Doesn't matter. This single quote also doesn't matter. But yeah, take a look. Okay, so we just echo this, right? Okay, that's fine. That's not going to put it in your clipboard or something. But I could just pipe this thing to clip copy, which is another little shell script that does copy pasting in a cross OS compatible way. But now if we do there, you can see, it's been copied to your clipboard. However, this pw command, it actually does not, which is pretty nice because it does a couple little nice features with WL copy to allow you to copy things in such a way that it becomes sensitive, which kind of gives some hints for, clipboard managers like Walker to be like, oh, by the way, like maybe I shouldn't save that because it's something sensitive. So, just going back to here, I take a look very quick. Look at this one into .friedrice, a little alias just to get you into your directory here. But if I open up that pw script here, it literally calls clip copy with -- sensitive. And if you take a look at clip copy here, it's a little script that just basically runs either WL copy, passing in all the args here like sensitive, etc., or it falls back to using pb copy if you're on macOS, or if you're on native Linux and you're not using Wayland, it also will use xclip there as well, which also works with WSL, etc., without needing to configure anything. But yeah, it's pretty nice here. But yeah, in any case here, I just wanted to show off that functionality because it's pretty handy. And also for generating a password on the fly here without even needing to go to the terminal, there is a global hotkey to do that one, which is, let me show you another hotkey here too. So this is going to be mod /, which is going to show all the different hotkeys that Niri has here. This is actually a custom Walker extension I wrote. It's a Lua script. It's in my .friedrice repo there. But this gives you a way to very easily explore all the different things that you could do. For example, maybe you're talking like, how do I launch a browser? It's going to be mod alt B. You can also add shift into the mix to do a private browser. You can also do control shift alt B here to be an isolated browser. For example, maybe you're doing a presentation at work or doing some contract work and you just want to use a private browser that doesn't have any of your profile information, no saved passwords, no history, etc. It's kind of like private on deluxe here, completely isolated environment. I do that when I record videos here. But yeah, there's all sorts of different things there. But going back to the password one, mod alt P is going to launch KeePass there, but you could also add shift into the mix to generate a random password right to your clipboard. So we can do, what is this, mod alt shift and then P. And then boom, right there, a password was copied to my clipboard. If I do Control V here, no, that's not the password here because look, remember that's the old one that we had before. If I open up another terminal here and paste it in, that's actually the new password that was generated there. So yeah, kind of nice way for you to just very quickly generate passwords. But yeah, going back to over here, again, super quick way just to explore all the different hotkeys that have been assigned in the Niri config. And then you can start doing things like, oh, how did you do a screenshot? Oh, I did that. It was just basically mod S here, but it also supports other things too. Like maybe you just want to screenshot the entire monitor or all your monitors, maybe just a specific window. Again, that whole video that I did on screenshotting has all the details there. But yeah, that's just a way to explore some of the stuff that you can do here. But yeah, going back to here, and then maybe now we can talk a little bit about Waybar. Which is what you see up top here. So it's broken up into a couple of different modules. We have the time up here as well as the date. Then these are all the different workspaces. Then on the left here, we have a nice little menu to do common things that you might want to do, such as shutting down or rebooting. Maybe you want to suspend stuff. You can lock the screen. And again, this is all using a custom Walker menu here. In this case, it's a D menu compatible menu. Very easy to customize. And here you can just be like, oh, I want to reboot. And then you can just do that, hit enter and reboot. Kind of don't want to do that now. So I'm going to hit escape here because rebooting during a video would be bad. And then over here on the right, we have all sorts of different different things. And by the way, there's all sorts of hidden goodies on things like you can do for each one of these. I'll show that in a sec, but some of the other icons over here, this kind of just slides out showing you OBS here or other applications that support that. Then, we have the sound over here. We'll go over it into more details in a sec. If you have Bluetooth devices here, if you have Ethernet or Wi-Fi, there's stuff going on there. And then this will give you some information about your computer. I just left click that one. And this actually launches a custom tmux session that shows you BTOP upstairs. And then downstairs below, it will be a GPU specific monitoring tool. I have an AMD, RX 480 here. And if you have an NVIDIA card or an Intel card, it'll load those appropriate tools there, depending on what GPU that you have. It's not going to install all three of them, but at install time for DotFriedRice, it's going to figure out what GPU you have, install the specific tool. If you want to use something like NVTop instead, if that's available on your system, the script will use that instead. So it's all up to you. And then you can just QQ out of this one. Maybe you don't care about GPU stuff, or you only want to look at BTOP, you can just right click that one and that is going to open it here. Again, by the way, I normally run a 4K monitor, so I'm zoomed in a lot for the sake of the video here. So that's why things look a little bit cramped, but this is BTOP here. Going back to some of these things, it's kind of funny because on this desktop, I don't even have a Bluetooth compatible chip to show anything. Likewise, I don't have a Wi-Fi card there. It's just an Ethernet on like a 12-year-old desktop. So, just going back maybe to what we saw a second ago, or I don't think I ran this for a long enough time to actually look at it. But if I do, a fast fetch here, you can see the stats of my machine, right? This is an i5 4460 from literally 2014, 16 gigs of memory, 8 gigabyte RX 480 there. And all things are up and running here, but I just wanted to mention that because there is no devices here for even to show you what these tools are doing. However, I do have a laptop where I do have a Bluetooth device and I do have a Wi-Fi connection there. So what I could do here is maybe just overlay some of the screenshots between both of them. So for example, here's the Bluetooth one now. So maybe you have some earbuds that you want to pop in. You can very easily configure that. And then when it comes to configuring your Wi-Fi here, again, you can kind of just pick the network that you have, join it, put in the password, etc., and it's really good. That's been set up really nicely. And honestly, I traveled with that laptop to multiple destinations. For example, I was in Turkey. I went to, 5 or 6 different hotels or, things like that. And they all had different setups there, but it was all super compatible. It was all very easy, kind of just find their network on the list, hit enter, put in the password, boom, I'm connected. But that's quite nice. But there's even some nice little hidden things here too. For example, if I were to just hit the thumb button on my mouse, that is going to copy my local IP address to my clipboard. And this is Mako, by the way, which is a notification running there. If I actually hit the forward button on my mouse, that's going to copy my public IP address to the clipboard here. I don't want to do that because it's going to show it. But all these things are facilitated through custom scripts here and custom binds. You can take a look at that. I actually did videos around getting the local IP and public IP before, which was kind of a little nice script there to wire that all together here. But there's even more information here too as well. For example, when it comes to sound, this one, I do have the ability to show this one. But yeah, if we go to something like recording, you can see I am recording my desktop audio now. We actually don't see anything bouncing around. OBS has full control over that one, but actually we'll see it in the input devices in a second here. But yeah, I have a Scarlett 2i2 3rd gen. It's a USB audio interface. It works really, really nicely here. And input devices here, we can see we're actually capturing my audio here. So if I stop speaking, then that goes down. But yeah, this is me speaking here. And there is some other things here too, set up to have like the webcam and blah, blah, blahs. Okay. So, this is, again, a TUI driven interface here. I kind of like this really TUI driven workflow. So I've always been a huge fan of the command line using tmux, etc. for a decade. And while, graphical apps are nice, it is nicer if you can just find something that just blends in with everything together. But, speaking about things blending in together, or actually maybe let's not get sidetracked with theming yet because there's multiple themes. Let's continue onwards with a little bit more with Waybar. So going back to here, maybe start closing down some of these workspaces here. But you can click these if you want. You can also hit different hotkeys to access them. But if you right click that, then that will actually show you the niri overview. And my thought process here is like, okay, well, like we're dealing with workspaces, we're dealing with niri. So yeah, let's just go ahead and kind of just make some hotkeys related to niri. So yeah, also if you middle click that one, that will actually launch, and let me just go to a clear workspace, so maybe it's a little bit easier to read. This is actually going to show you all the different niri actions that are available to run on the command line, all fuzzy findable here, which is pretty nice. So for example, if you just were to run something like niri message and then get the help, then you can see all sorts of different things that you can do here. For example, if you wanted to exit niri, you can do that. And by the way, it will warn you before you do something like that. It's, effectively logging you out of your entire session there. You can focus columns and windows and do all sorts of different things here. But what's really cool about this one, it's a super fast way to just explore what's available to do with niri. And then you can see the help menu here on how to use these actual things here, which is pretty fun. And again, if you were to, click one of these or hit enter over them, it's actually going to do the thing. So that would be pretty nice to do. And there's actually other ways to access access that menu too. You don't just need to middle click that on your mouse or whatever, because maybe you're using a trackpad or whatever. There's, by the way, really great trackpad support with niri too. But like I said before, this mod / is going to launch this shortcut window here with Walker. Well, you could also just do mod shift / and that is going to load that menu that we just saw here, which is pretty cool. So maybe I can launch, I don't know, something like a terminal here. We'll do that mod shift and then / and then maybe center this column here. And then boom, look at that. It's centered right there and ready to go. So that's just some things, little access things here. And yeah, when it comes to maybe the clock, before we get to the left-hand side there, right now I am in Eastern time zone, but if I just scroll up on the mouse wheel, that's going to switch me over to UTC. So that's also very configurable, and it's not just a toggle between 2 time zones. You can filter between many different time zones. For example, maybe you're at work, maybe you live in New York or whatever, and you want to have access to be able to see what's a time in Japan or Tokyo or something, or maybe the West Coast US or London or whatever. You can add as many as you want, and then you can kind of just cycle between them using whatever hotkey that you like. And then I also really like this idea here of just seeing the full date like this. If I actually left click this one, then it will translate this down to 24-hour time. You can see now it's 19:05, right? And if I left click that one, it's back to 7:05 p.m. And then also, you maybe has seen this thing pop up a few times now. This, I'm just hovering over the clock area, and it's showing a really nice little calendar for the year. Down here, well, I can't move a mouse off of it, but down there in the middle of May there, it's May 9th, I'm recording this video. Then, yeah, that kind of just highlights that. You can even see what week it is for the year, which is pretty cool. I find this to be actually more useful than you might think. For example, maybe I just want to see, oh, someone's on the call with me and they're like, are you available next Thursday or something like that? And I'm like, I have no idea. So then I can kind of just check this real quick. Or maybe I want to know oh, is the 18th a Monday or is that a Sunday or something like that? It's really handy. But there's even more things you can do here as well. For example, let's go back to here, maybe start closing out some of these workspaces here, just so I don't get super bogged down with many different things, because I am using a 12-year-old computer, although in this case, it's not really too big of a deal. Things are running blazing fast here. But yeah, if I were to just let's say middle click this, then this will open up Google Calendar. And then from there, I can go and access my actual calendar where I need to do things. You can configure that if you want. I don't want to do that one on video because it's my calendar that has a whole bunch of personal things. But yeah, if I hit the thumb button on my mouse, that is actually going to open up World Time Buddy here, which is a way for you to very quickly, just get an idea of what are, different times in different areas. Because, maybe you don't want to have it in your little scroll wheel here, but you do want to see hey, by the way, I need to schedule a call with someone in Australia. What time is it there? But yeah, going back to here, there's other things you can do besides just left clicking this to bring up this menu. If you right click this menu, it will bring up the, basically a system menu for all the different hotkeys here. You can also middle click this one. And this one's pretty fun. This will actually give you all the different things that you can do in Waybar. So for example, you can mouse wheel over this and left click that and right click that. All of those are going to be here. And if you actually select one of these, then it will go and do the thing. So there's all sorts of different things you can do here. Remember I mentioned before how, over the network one, you can actually copy your local IP address, but here's the one to copy your public IP address. Or, maybe you want to do just launching Impala or whatever. In this case here, if I actually tried to click this one, then it will just let me know hey, there's a Wi-Fi adapter not found here. Likewise, if I click this one too, it's saying, oh, look, there's no Bluetooth adapter, because there isn't one. So it's not going to try to error out, forcing you to open a program that you don't have open here. So yeah, that's Waybar in a nutshell. There's all sorts of different nice little things about that one. But yeah, I use this a lot for a lot of different things. But yeah, maybe now we can even go over some other things as well. For example, right now we are looking at Tokyo Moon Night as a theme here with this background. But if I hit mod and then the / key, that's going to cycle through all the different available wallpapers for this theme. There's a couple of them here that I have set up. All of them look kind of cool. I like them. But yeah, and there's the last one there too. And besides just switching wallpapers like that, you can also do mod shift and then /. And then look at this. Here's another custom Walker menu to be able to explore all the different wallpapers here. And then, yeah, you can see the synergizes with Tokyo Night Moon. Because with DotFriedRice, I like this idea of you could have a background or a wallpaper that applies to multiple different themes. It's not just for one theme, right? So all the wallpapers, you will find them in one directory, but then, yeah, when it comes to configuring the theme's compatibility with this wallpaper or synergizing with one, you can set it there. So yeah, let's go back to, I don't know, Celestial Glow. That's the one that was set anyways. But besides setting wallpapers, you can also do setting themes too. For example, if I do mod control /, that is going to switch over to using Groovebox here. You can see Spooky Triangle, there's the wallpaper there. And now, this has its own set of wallpapers where I can do the same keybind as before, mod and then the backslash here, which is going to filter through some of the wallpapers available for this theme. There's not as many of them here, but they're there if you want to do it. And then also, just like before, we can do the shift, and now in this case, we're playing around with themes. So you could basically do mod control shift and then backslash, and here is a way for you to visually check out what themes are available, and then you can switch over to the ones that you want. You can see actually like a nice little human readable name, the actual theme name on disk, and then how many wallpapers it has here. You can also fuzzy match all of these because, it's just Walker at the end of the day here. So if I want to go back to Tokyo Night Moon, then boom, there it is. And then I can just like tap, tap, tap to find the background that I want. But I should mention here too that, this is not just, a wallpaper and theming Waybar or something like that. This is theming everything. So check it out. We've got the browser over here, or actually that was a terminal, not a browser, but let's open up a terminal over here. And then maybe open up a little bit of, I'll open up Thunar here, another file manager. And then I guess we'll do something like just, bring it up so we can see multiple things at once. Then from here, let me just launch a little bit of tmux here. So we have a couple of different split panes, but yeah, I'll just like launch btop up here. And then maybe down here, we'll do something like a fast fetched. And then maybe down here, we'll just do this DotFriedRice alias here, which will get you to NeoVim. So in this case here, now it's like, well, what if I would want to switch over to using Groovebox? So I can do the same binds that we did before here, kind of just switch over to using Groovebox here. You could see things all got updated on the fly here. If we go back to the other tmux one, this gets updated too. So just to keep me honest here, if I were to, again, flip over to using a different theme, Tokyo Night Moon, then yeah, it's going to switch everything over in real time. And this is pretty nice because, any GTK application that you have, like if you have, in this case, Thunar, or maybe you have Firefox, or you have GIMP, or you have LibreOffice, they're all going to get updated to using whatever theme that you have immediately without needing to close them out. And a lot of terminal apps will do the same here too, including Waybar up here, which is pretty nice. So yeah, that's theme switching there. And let's see. So let me start closing out some of these windows here, just so we have a little bit more space to play around. Also maybe go back to the darker background here. I kind of really like this one here, a nice little space theme. But yeah, right now there's only 2 themes. Of course, more to come potentially in the future based on, yeah, if people want to contribute stuff, that's totally fine. I'll also add some more, I'm sure, over time as well. So that's basically, niri and then Waybar. We kind of went over a little bit of things with Walker as well, just as a reminder, being able to launch all sorts of different things like this. So now let's go over a list of packages that are installed and how you might want to be able to modify some of these things as you see fit. So in the README file down here somewhere, there is a list of all the different packages that are installed here. And if we scroll down to the bottom, by the way, it all categorized here, like these are all system services, etc. But let's scroll to the bottom just for now. The desktop environment, it's composed of all these different things, right? We have Mako here for notifications that we just saw before. Again, we can even demonstrate that on the command line here if we do we could do notify send here. Let's do hello world. There it is. Cool. And then we send it and there it is. So that's Mako there. All sorts of different cool things around this one. And when it comes to notifications, you can set things to be critical or not. You can turn them on, you can turn them off. There's all different keybinds for all that stuff there. But then, yeah, we have niri. And then also we have things like sway lock and sway idle, for example. So if your machine has no activity for whatever amount of time, you can automatically configure a lock screen here. There's also a sway lock if you can, independently want to lock that as well. These options are here, for example, if you wanted to lock your screen. I'm not going to do it now just because I'm recording a video, but yeah, you have to enter in your password to regain access there. Sway BG is for setting the wallpapers here. Then there's UWSM, which is a nice little way to run processes kind of wrapped up into a systemd service. It's all hands-free once it's all set up here. Niri is actually getting kicked off in this way so that any processes that niri launches, belongs basically to hierarchy there. And that's super important to go into this video here. But then we have Waybar. Yep, that's what we see up top here. Then there's WLRCTL, which is a nice little utility for sending keys. For example, maybe you want to be able to send, I don't know, like a Control-C or something like that. I actually have this set up with the clipboard manager with Walker. So like, for example, if I were to actually select this item here, it would then insert the key. Basically, it's just inserting a Control-V or a Control-Shift-V, depending if you're in a terminal or not. So right now, I'm just on a web page doing nothing or whatever, but if I were to open up a terminal and then do Control-V here and just select this and hit enter, that is going to basically send a Control-Shift-V there. And, if you're in an input box in a browser, it would just do Control-V there instead. Although technically, I think Firefox does, and maybe even other browsers too, they do support both. So, but yeah, it's a nice way for you to be able to configure what applications need Control-Shift versus just Control. Then there's some portal information installation. These are low-level details with niri. I'll do future videos about them. It's not important here. But yeah, when it comes to the launcher, Walker is the launcher. Then it also has this elephant backend that gives all the different providers here, the calculator, clipboard, all the different ones that you see here. There's actually even more on Walker's website there, or Elephant's GitHub, whatever. But yeah, these are the ones that I use in my day-to-day, so they're all installed. By the way, I try to use the AUR very sparingly. It's basically only this tool and Walker. All the rest are, just regular repositories on Arch Linux. But when it comes to the file manager here, yep, we have Thunar. And what's really nice too about this one is, there are thumbnails are going to be supported. For example, if I go and open up Thunar now, then we can go and take a look here at maybe the media directory, and then we can go to logos, and then, here's all the thumbnails for all different, open source logos and things you might just find in my YouTube thumbnails or something like that. But there's also, a way for you to right-click this one if you want, and you can kind of just go to Create Archive here. And if you wanted to just archive this into a zip file by default, you can also choose different extensions. That's there for you to do as well. I really, really, really like Thunar. It is an awesome file manager here because there's a lot of different things you can do with this one. For example, if I just go full screen, if I wanted to just right-click, like Open Terminal here, I could totally do that, and that's going to put me in Media Logos here. There's a nice little shortcut here if you want to click that instead. It's going to do the same thing. You can filter things down with search. You could also, split this into a tab. Now you have two tabs where you can kind of just drag drop stuff between both of them at your discretion. If you don't want to have tabs, instead you can just click the icon again. There's also hotkeys here too as well. You can also do this too, where you actually open up a new tab. I misspoke there for a second ago. I should have said it's split, not a tab. This is an actual tab. You can see the different tabs up top here. Again, just as a reminder, this would be the split view here. You can also launch a separate complete instance if you want to. You can drag drop between both of them. It all just works really nicely. So yeah, Thunar is, in my opinion, one of the best file managers on Linux, at least if you're going to use a graphical one. So yeah, there's that. I'll do definitely more details about this in future videos, but it's all there. And then, yeah, for capturing things, we have all sorts of ways to create screenshots, but there's also Hyper Picker for being able to pick a specific color. Now, let's say, for argument's sake, I forgot what hotkey I had that bound to, then you can totally just launch, the hotkey shortcut here and be like, oh, how do you do colors? Aha, okay, pick color, it's Mod Shift P. So if you do Mod Shift P, there's a color picker here, and we can actually see it zooms in, and then you can pick the actual color under the cursor here. In this case, let's pick this one. If I just left click that, it's going to be copied to the clipboard. And if I go to the clipboard manager, there's a hex code there, and you can paste it into whatever you want. Of course, you don't need to use the clipboard manager. You could just use standard hotkeys that you've probably used for 1,000 years when it comes to copy pasting text or cutting text as well. Then a couple of different fonts are installed. Yeah, we have, emoji support fonts here, and a couple of different free fonts here, which I kind of like. And then, yeah, we'll go into more details about fonts in a sec. Really, there's only going to be one system font that's installed here by DotFriedRice. Beyond here, we'll go over that in a sec. It's not installed technically as like an Arch package, just because I wanted to make it compatible with many different ways, but that's not important for here or there. For now, let's take a look here at the list of applications that are installed. So we have Firefox, right, a browser. We have Ghosty, which is a terminal. GIMP is going to be an image editor. Kdenlive for video editing. KeePass for managing your passwords. I have probably close to like 400 passwords in there. It's quite nice. LibreOffice, in case you want to play around with spreadsheets or rake documents, or maybe need to do something for work or whatever it happens to be. I actually think spreadsheets are a really powerful tool, so I use this quite a bit. Then MPV, I've done a whole video about this one. This is not only a video player, but an image viewer as well. It is one of the best tools I've probably ever used. I want to say ever, that's kind of a lot, but it's like, it is a really, really, really good tool. Like, for example, I don't know, what could we do? Let's go to media here, and maybe I'll go to YouTube, like some other video that I made the other day around Arch Linux installation. Like if I click this, and it's not going to play any audio by default because it's on a different track here, but I mean, the way I have things configured with MPV, and I've done a video about MPV in general, but I didn't make a video about this one feature yet, is like, let's say that you just want to like make a clip out of this video here. I could just like click there, sure, fine. I'm going to hit a hotkey that's going to like set one mark at one point. I could hit I can move this at a different point in time, hit a different hotkey to set a different mark, and then I can just hit another hotkey and boom, that just actually created a clip. It's not re-encoding the video, and the clip is right here. It's even auto-incremented with a file name and everything, and it all just works really super nicely. Yeah, I'm going to totally make a video about that one, but man, MPV is like, it is so good. Yeah. And then we have OBS here for recording videos here, as you see here, doing some screencasts. It's actually on a different monitor. I could bring it over for a sec in case you just want to see it. Like, there it is. That's one really cool thing about Niri, by the way. It supports multiple monitors in such a great way. For example, if I go over to my second monitor, which I'm not recording right now, it has its own set of workspaces there, and I can kind of just use that independently on its own. Then I'm in the main monitor here. It has its own set of workspaces as well. And then, yeah, it's very easy to kind of move things between different monitors at your discretion. Then we have Thunar here for just viewing PDFs. I think this is a really great PDF viewer. Maybe you have some ebooks that you want to read. It's super fast, super easy. I'll make a dedicated video about that one. And then, there's Virt Manager here because it's all set up out of the box for you to be able to run virtual machines using QEMU on the back end. And then, Virt Manager here. This way you can play around with setting up, different things in whatever virtual environments that you might want to set up. So yeah, those are all the graphical, related packages that are installed here. But then also going back up to some of the things here, like different TUIs, like we have Blue TUI, this is for Bluetooth devices here. Then we have BTOP, which we just saw before for doing system monitoring. And again, it's such a nice tool here. I can actually right click this one and bring it up, maybe go some full screen here. But what's really cool about this one is, you can kind of just like play around, sort things by different ways here. And then, just learn a little bit more about your system. For example, if I wanted to check out one of these NeoVim instances that are running, then I can kind of just like hit enter into it and then boom, just see all sorts of different things, how long it's been running for, how much memory is it being used, how much CPU, etc. All the different CPU cores on my super beefy 4460 from 2014. There it is with my 16 gigs of memory. Even with all the stuff running now, only using 3 gigs. It boots at basic a little bit over 1 gig, all in, which is kind of nice. But yeah, let's kill that out for now. Then FCF, I've done 1,000 videos about that in the past. Really great, like just for reverse searching your history and so much more, like so much more. For example, I cleared my history before starting this video here, but these are some of the things that I just ran. And then we can just choose one of those and do that. But again, it's so much more than that. For example, if you want to see a list of all the different packages that you have installed, this is powered by FCF. And it even searches not just the package name, but the description too. These are things that you have on your system here. You can also choose to remove packages, add packages with the AOR, not with the AOR. Maybe you want to look at some Arch news, so you can just do something like PKG news and then see some of the news here straight from the Arch repository. And then even there's a way to do this in like a quiet mode that kind of gives you just the headlines too, in case you want to go and check out the Arch news here. Let me go and just bring this up here so we can see it a little bit easier. But yeah, if you do PKG and then --help, that'll give you a list of all the different commands. And again, I'm not trying to compress all the different complexity here. You should be able to manage your system running the raw commands here. So yeah, there is little wrappers for PKG list, but really that's just running pacman, QEI here. But here's another one too, where you can just do the news here with Q, and then that's going to give you just the headlines. So for example, if we do news Q just like this, then there you go. You can see all the different headlines here of all the different things. And if you want to learn more details, you can always click the link here, go read them on the Arch News site. Actually, we'll see in a bit here, when you actually install DotFriedRice, then it will show you this beforehand. You can do a confirmation, in case you want to maybe not install packages right away without hitting yes. So there's a lot of information there. We'll go into that in a little bit more. I just want to wrap up some of the stuff here. So just going back to here, I guess less is technically a TUI, right? If we were to have something like DFR, go here, maybe quit out just so we're in here. So if I were to do less on the README file, you can kind of just go through the README file like this. Like I sort of see it as a TUI, so I kind of put it there as one. But yeah, libcalculate, that's another one, whole separate video. NeoVim, yep, we were looking at that before. rmpc is a really great music player. I'll go over that in a sec. Then we have tmux here and wiremix. So wiremix is what we saw up here when we clicked here. So we can kind of just get a little bit more information about our input and output devices here. But yeah, tmux, again, I've done a lot of videos about that in the past, but we'll go into the music player in a sec. But tmux is amazing, right? It's this ability to have basically multiple sessions and windows and panes and split up your terminal in such a consistent way that right now I'm using Ghosty, right? But when I was on Windows using the Windows terminal, I had all the same hotkeys, all the same theming, all the same searching, all the same scroll back, all the same abilities to have sessions and windows and panes and all of that. tmux is an unbelievable abstraction on basically just using different terminals. And yeah, in this case here, I have one window open, but now I have two, and I can jump between both of them. So let me just add something to the screen here so we can see, but I'm switching between 1 and 2, 1 and 2. And then of course you can split things vertically or maybe horizontally, and you can do it to your heart's content here. Then you can also make different sessions here. You can see I have a couple already open here from my main machine here, but it's yeah, if you want to jump into any one of these, you just pick it and go, and there you are. And then it's all set up, ready to go out of the box for you. This looks a little bit crazy now because I'm super zoomed in for the video. I didn't plan to even show that one, but it's not a big deal. But yeah, tmux is super valuable, super powerful. I've been using it for literally 10 years. It is one of the favorite tools that I have on my box here. And yep, that's why I listed it here, and that's why it's installed. So going back to playing music, so one really nice thing here too is, for example, there's nothing up top that looks like there's any music going on. And right now, actually, there is not any music going on. But if I were to hit a hotkey on my keyboard now, or actually maybe I'll just run rmpc first. Well, no, let's go with the hotkey. We'll just launch it through that. So if you do mod and then alt and M, then that is going to launch the music player here, which is rmpc, which is a Rust TUI here for playing all sorts of different music. Let me make that full screen, just a little bit easier to read. Now you know the type of music I listen to here. But yeah, you could just hit enter on one of these. Do I have desktop audio being recorded with OBS? I do. 1 second. Let me mute that actually. Okay, that's been muted. So now if I hit this, watch what happens though in the top right. So I'm gonna, whatever, pick this one, sure. And there it goes. Yeah, I don't think this is being recorded on video. I hope not. But yeah, you could see it up here, which is actually playing. But here's what's really cool. So you can go through and get a list of all the different things. I'll make a whole video on this tool, by the way. It's also an unbelievably amazing tool. But let me kill that. And here is where things get kind of interesting. So if I just left click that, then that is going to pause the music. Cool, that's pretty nice. I can left click again, and there it is, right? But I can also hit the mouse wheel to go through randomly here my basically, different music that I have here, and it's going to play through all of them here, which is pretty nice. And yeah, I like that a lot. And what's even cooler too, though, is, all this stuff is assigned to different hotkeys, so you can do that if you'd like. You can even skip like 10 seconds forward or 10 seconds back with different hotkeys. I use this stuff all the time here. If I'm listening to music, coding away, I typically have these things playing locally here, and then, yeah, I just manipulate it through there. And if I want to just middle click here, that is going to launch this here. And what's really cool about this, though, is, for example, let's say if that goes away, whatever, closing out tmux. If I have something else open here to the right, let's say, it doesn't matter what it is, but if I were to middle click this again, then it just jumps me right over to here. So this has this idea of being able to launch or focus. So if it's already launched, then it'll just focus it there. It's not going to keep opening multiple instances of that. And also if I right click this one, then it's just going to, stop it and make it go away, and things are done. But what's really cool though is like the music has stopped. There's nothing running. It's not playing. However, the state of this has been saved with MPD. So this is a daemon running in the background. So like, for example, if I were to do something like, in my case here, I'm just going to hit basically a media key on my keyboard now to play. And that just played it right now. And I have media keys on my keyboard to do things like, jump to different tracks and whatever. It's all there. But yeah, you can have a completely hotkey driven approach if you want. And if you don't even have media keys on your keyboard, you can just rebind them really easily without even needing to fork the project here to your heart's content. So let me just close that out now because, yep, taking up some room there. But yeah, that's MPD there with rmpc. So going back to here, to the README file here, I'm not going to go through every single command line tool that's installed because I'll end up making like 1,000 different videos about this one in the future. But like if I go to the .friedrice path here and maybe just run like Eza, it's a popular thing to run, then we get this nice little output here where we see, all the directories, all the files, different like octal permissions here, the permissions written out, the file size in human format, all sorts of nice things that you would expect to find. And then, yeah, you can use things like bat instead of cat here if you want to just, set the README file here, look at it in a nice little syntax highlighted way here. That's pretty cool. And when it comes to things like LSLA here, I'm not going to be overwriting that. You can always run Eza if you want here. You can get the normal behavior here if that's what you prefer here. And yeah, there's just a lot of different command line tools installed here, including Docker as well, Docker Compose, etc. There's fastfetch and ffmpeg, all sorts of different great things here. JQ, YQ for YAML. Yeah, there's a whole list here, and I'm sure literally I will make probably 100 videos about this stuff in the future. But all this stuff is kind of geared towards, sort of power user, software developer, people who really care about their computer. I hate using the term like, oh my God, you're a power user, but like it's someone who just actually really cares about their environment, using the command line, using all sorts of different things. You really want to optimize your workflows for you. That's what all these tools are basically doing here. Even like Web is really cool. It's like, for example, there it is here, you run it. It will start capturing all sorts of different things like about your inputs. For example, if I hit the C key, look in the bottom right there, I'm spamming it now, but it shows you the exact key being pressed, the actual key number, the state, and all this other stuff. If you move your mouse, you can click the different buttons. You can do all sorts of different things there. So that's really nice just to get an idea of like, in case you're using some services like KeyD or whatever to remap some of your keys, you can kind of get information about, mouse buttons and keys and all that different things there. It actually works as a really nice way to be able to clean your keyboard without disconnecting your USB cable. So you can just run Web there and then, go crazy cleaning your keyboard. It's not going to start, executing global hotkeys. So that's pretty nice too. Funny enough, I may make a video about that one in the future as well. But yeah, all that stuff is set up over here. And, going back to mentioning how there's different flavors of .friedrice. For example, if you have the command line version, then you are going to get all of these different CLI tools and the TUIs as well. And then also, like, if you're using Windows, you would be expected to install the Microsoft Terminal on your own, but it will theme out the Microsoft Terminal and everything. And if you're using macOS and Ghosty, all that will get themed out as well. There's actually an elaborate documentation in the README file on even how to create a brand new WSL instance on Windows and get all that stuff set up. But yeah, these are just some of the things here during the Arch installation phase, which, there isn't an ISO for this or anything like that. You will need to run through the Arch installer, which we'll get to near the end. It's not a big deal. But yeah, you can choose which Linux kernel that you want. It's also going to figure out which GPU drivers to install for you automatically. For example, going back over here, if you run fast fetch again, you can see I am running an AMD like RX 480, but when I started this journey on Linux, I was using my GeForce 750 Ti, which is 2GB card, and it was working great on Windows. It didn't really work very well on Linux for me. It's a really old card with very minimal resources. And yeah, so even when it comes to installing GPU drivers, it will figure out if you have a really old card, use the legacy drivers. If you have a new card, use basically the best drivers you can do. And then for AMD, it's really easy. And Intel, it works as well. But yeah, it's all set up here for you. Here's a couple of different system services that are set up. For example, when it comes to using Bluetooth there, we're using BlueZ. And then DNS actually is a dependency of QEMU, or maybe it was Vert Manager, one of the two. But yeah. Then we also have things like IP tables and, IWD here for wireless daemon here, LACT in case you want to do a little bit of overclocking on your GPU, or maybe undervolting, or maybe you want to play around with, the curves for your fans there. You can do all that there. libvirt is related to just setting up virtual machines and all that. There's MPD here for having all the music. And I will mention here too, one awesome thing about this is that if you were playing some music, right, then you decide to reboot. Let's say you're playing a song and it's at the 3-minute mark. If you go and shut down your computer and reboot back up, then your play state is going to be saved. So you can resume right again at the 3-minute mark. So it just writes a little text file to disk and it all handles all that for you. This is such an amazing combo. I love it so much. And then, yeah, pacman contrib, because there are, things you might want to set up here, like, clearing out your cache over a certain period of time. DotFriedRice will set up for you automatically, the ability to clear out your old cached pacman files here on basically a systemd timer. Then we also have the Pipewire for audio stuff here. And yeah, it's all set up here and ready to go. That's just a few things basically DotFriedRice does for you. I feel like this is going to be one of those things where I will go to bed now in maybe 4 hours and I'll be like, you know what? I forgot about 8,000 things, but I feel like that's the gist of it, right? We went over some of the niri stuff, some of the walker stuff. We went over Waybar, some of the nice little features of being able to play with things. For example, even the forward and back buttons on this icon here, the system one, will allow you to choose your theme and wallpaper. I didn't show that before, but it's kind of there just to play around. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of different documentation here for doing all sorts of different things. For example, if you wanted to add custom apps or custom themes, it's all there. Maybe speaking of which, before we get into installing anything here, it could be worth it just to go over a little bit about the directory structure here of basically what's going on. So if we go to .friedrice here, the alias, that's going to bring us up over here. I'll just make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. This is the repo that will ultimately get cloned down by the install script that does everything for you. You don't need to worry about cloning it on your own. But yeah, if you take a look here at this _themes directory, there is Tokyo Night and Groovebox. And the idea here is we have all sorts of different tools that can be themed out. And inside the theme.json file, this is where you can kind of pick your synergy with whatever wallpapers are available. Because in the wallpapers directory, they're all over here. They're kind of all mixed in here. And it's on you or on the theme creator to kind of figure out oh, you know what? This wallpaper looks pretty good with this theme and that theme and the other theme. And then if you have no wallpapers available, it'll just fall back to this color here. There is this idea of a variant where it could be dark or light because maybe, there will be light themes in the future. And then, yeah, that will just become light for that specific theme here. But you can see here, all sorts of different things for different things. So for example, if we go to GTK here, that's how you can theme a GTK app here. There's one for niri, for example, setting things like the borders around here, the focus ring, etc. Yeah, a lot of good stuff here as well. And then, yeah, if you want to theme out tmux, that's all set up here where just the colors are here. Then we have Waybar and Walker and Zuthura and, basically all the different files here. And they ultimately get symlinked over to a directory in your config directory, your real one. And then, yeah, they become activated immediately. Then besides all the different theme files here, we also have the preview JPEG here. And actually, if you go over to the README file here, then you'll be able to see those previews over here. And then also these previews are what's being used here. When you go and want to, maybe check out what theme you want to pick, that's the preview of the theme here, kind of shows up here on the right-hand side. So yeah, when it comes to themes like this, if you were to want to theme a different application, then you would just put in the application's, details here, whatever files that need to be themed. And then there is inside of the .friedrice script. Again, I don't want to go crazy into all the details in this video, but there is a nice little set theme function here that will then symlink things where they need to be. So you would just add the new file here. It's all explained in the README file if you want to check it out here. But yeah, that's basically how that goes there. That's a super high level of things like themes and wallpapers. But, what about other common things that you might want to do, like adjust what packages get installed? Now, this is the config file here. It's get ignored because it is different for everybody, because this is your personalized setup here. Like even on my laptop, I have different things in here. I don't think it makes sense to go over this file in excruciating detail here, but I will skim over it, somewhat here as well. Like for example, if you did want to fork the repo, you can just put in, whatever clone URL you want to use instead of mine here. Yeah, there's a lot of things like configuring your name and email. You'll actually get prompted for this once when you bootstrap the machine here, and then it writes it out to a git config file, and we'll read it from there. So it'll only prompt you one time. But if you want to put your name here, you can. Also, as you'll see during the installation, the bootstrapping phase, this will actually get adjusted for you based on options that you pick here. But yeah, I just wanted to go down here a little bit to the packages setup, at least for now. And again, we'll see this in more depth when we actually go over installing .friedrice. This is basically how easy it could be to customize things that you do or do not want. For example, even on this box here, I'm installing a couple of extra packages. So I did run Windows for a very long time. So I actually have a second hard drive that is using NTFS. So I wanted to mount that with that file system here. Maybe one day I will format and use ext4, but for now, I just install that package. For now, also, I am installing Steam manually. Just adding the package there is all we need to get going. Then besides this idea of extras, and by the way, I'm doing that in, pacman_GUI here because I am running Arch Linux, and this is like, the desktop environment, basically GUI, this is enabled here, graphical user interface. But there are different variables for different things. Like for example, that would be all the command line packages here. There's one for the AUR graphical versions, and then also, apt if you're on Debian or Ubuntu or any Debian-based distro, as well as, brew for Mac install, complete with casks here. They all follow the same pattern here where, yeah, you can just add extra things to install, or you can skip things. For example, if we take a look here at the default packages for Arch, here is a list of them. You're not meant to edit this file directly, but yeah, there's all the default CLI packages, and that documentation page we looked at before with a list of everything, yeah, it gets basically generated from that internally. It's not part of the project, not a big deal, but yeah, so there's all the different ones here. So, and there's Mies here too, if you want to install, programming languages and things like that. We'll go over that in a bit. Actually, I will mention here too, on Debian, quite a few packages are installed that way, just so you get the latest versions of all sorts of different things, including NeoVim. So with that said, going back down to here, what you could do is like, maybe actually, let's go back to this one. Yeah, here for the AUR one, or not AUR, but for Arch Linux, if you wanted to actually say, maybe I don't want to have Kdenlive because I never do any video editing. So you can just go here and just go to skip for GUI here, and you can just put in Kdenlive like this. And now when you set everything up and you run everything, then this package will not be installed. So that's how easy it would be just to customize things here. And yeah, there's all sorts of patterns like that for a lot of things here. For example, I like to use Ansible, so I have that installed with Mies here, but it's not installed by default, so you can choose to have these things. Same type of pattern here, extra, skip, etc. You can also choose, by the way, if you wanted to, like if I did this and just null that out to nothing, then no packages would get installed. And you can also, of course, if you really wanted to, instead of, customizing things this way, you can just put in whatever packages that you want here, and it will only install those packages, basically overriding the defaults there, the whole entire list. But yeah, that pattern is applied for a lot of different things. We can also install scripts as well. Maybe I'll go over that in a sec here. Yeah, why not? Because we're already talking about it. So if we go to the documentation here for scripts, these are all little standalone shell scripts or Python scripts that I happen to write that help me solve a very specific task. We're not going to go over all of them now, but they're here. For example, BMSU is like back my stuff up. And it is a shell script that uses rsync to very, very easily back things up to maybe an external drive or sync files between a laptop. And even I have an Android phone where that works as well. I've been using that script for a very long time in one way or another for just, backing up my life's work, basically. Then there's all sorts of nice little convenience things here too for notes. And, maybe you want to analyze your income and expenses. I've got a script for that as well. All sorts of things here you can check out as well. I'll do, again, dedicated videos about that one here too. Notes are pretty interesting though, I suppose. For example, if you do mod alt M here, that is going to open up music. But if you do mod alt N, that is going to open up your notes. So I kind of like using NeoVim for a lot of things here. Here's some chicken scratch that I wrote when I was trying to debug something that turned out to be actually a non-issue here. But yeah, in this case here, these are notes for just May. I've got notes for every other month and year because this is how I keep track of my notes here. That's actually all facilitated here through this note script. I've been using this forever. I have literally 20 years of plain text notes here. It's open source and available and installed by default by .friedrice here if you wanted to. But the documentation here says, if you want to not install that one, then you can just skip notes here. here and it wouldn't be installed. But really, I would suggest giving plain text notes a shot. It is really nice. Again, maybe I'll do separate videos. Well, technically there is a video about this one here, but it's from a long time ago, but it's still valid. It's holding up. You know, this repo was created, what, 7 years ago, and I'm still using it today. Very little has changed since then too, just because, hey, the script actually works. But yeah, then there's things like, you know, different configs. You can choose to add your own, modify, skip some stuff as well. Although technically there's no skip variable there. Maybe I'll add that in the future, but, you know, going back to here, you know, in this config directory, you know, all these things are going to get symlinked into your real config directory. You know, not all the directories themselves, but sometimes individual files. But yeah, if you wanted to customize something where you didn't want to have NeoVim, then you can just go into the install config here and remove it. Although technically, you know, that would require making a diff in the Git repo. Maybe in the future, again, I would just add a shortcut there to skip them. But if you wanted to do it another way, you can also just, you know, copy all these over into your personal config and then just remove the NeoVim one from there. And then boom, you'd be in full control of your NeoVim setup. And that goes for any single item that you see here, which is a lot of different things here too. And also, by the way, you know, certain system level things will be set up for you too, depending on what operating system that you have, just so things work, you know, out of the box for all sorts of different things. There's also ways for you to configure, you know, Sudoers entries here as well. For example, you know, if I open up another terminal here, actually, let me just log in as root, I suppose. All right. Yep. And then we go to etc Sudoers D. And then in here, you'll see all sorts of different things here. You know, there's one for your user. That in my case, it's going to be Nick. You know, it's not passwordless sudo all the way. That would be kind of crazy on your main system here. But yeah, you know, you're in the Sudoers group. Basically, you can run sudo itself. And then also here, you know, for time date CTL here, this is set up here too by DotFriedRice so that you actually don't need to type in a password to set your time zone. Because yeah, if you middle click on this one, you can actually set your time zone with geo assistance being optional. You know, it's not going to automatically pick that one, but it's going to give you assistance there. You know, if you wanted to choose like whatever it is from anywhere, you can choose that as well. I've done a video about that one in the past too. But yeah, Sudoers is all set up there for you. And then also, yeah, even you can have udev rules set up too. You know, in this case, it's going to be very specific to your hardware. But I have a very, very, very old SSD, and like, I noticed that my system was hanging, I guess, for maybe 5 or 10 seconds periodically. And I couldn't explain or couldn't really identify why until I really went down super down rabbit holes here. And it turns out that, yeah, I guess modern Linux kernels will, I don't know, I guess what the exact term would be for it, but it will turn something on your SSD on and off very fast. And my like super first gen SSD was like, slow your roll, man. Like I just can't handle that. So I just set it to max performance where it doesn't do that anymore. And now it just runs perfectly fine. And then also likewise for my AMD GPU, which again, the RX 480 is a really, really old card here. I just set the performance to high here too, because I just noticed that certain GPU intensive tasks were just like making things hitch a little bit, but this made it not hitch anymore. And that's been running very smooth for a couple of months now. Didn't have any issues whatsoever. So yeah, you can set udev rules here. And of course, you don't need to manage these in this file. You can just write them out directly to udev rules. It's not going to modify anything that's in there that's not managed by the dot files. But it's really nice, in my opinion, having them here because I am a very, very big fan of this idea of infrastructure as code. And if you're not doing like DevOps or SRE or platform work, you know, maybe that's a foreign term to you, but think about it in the context of dot files, right? If you were to get a brand new computer or maybe something really bad happened and you had to like redo everything, you know, all of this code is here for you to be able to set up your machine in like 10 or 15 minutes in basically one command, a couple config values, and you're done. So I wanted to be able to have the custom things on my machine also in code here. So I back up this file to my external drive. If I had to like recreate everything because something horribly went wrong, which it hasn't so far, then I wouldn't need to remember like, oh, did I have like a udev rule in rules D somewhere? Like, no, it's all in the config file here. So maybe over time, even more things will get added here. But yeah, lastly down here, we also have systemd services being enabled by default, like Docker, if you happen to have Docker installed. There's actually some nonsense comments down here. I'm going to blur them out for the video. They're not important. They're basically my own personal notes. And since this file is not git commit, it's never commit up accidentally. So yeah, I kind of just use that for like a scratch pad on things that I would change within the dot files. It's not important to see here. Yeah, I guess now maybe it would be a good idea to once over this real fast. I'm not going to read anything, but I just want to make sure I didn't forget anything on video here because yeah, it's all set up here. I will mention here too, you know, the README file calls this one out. Besides using all the hotkeys, you can actually set themes and the wallpaper from the command line too. There's quite a few different command line tools installed here just to help you on various different things. So like, for example, if we were to go to the .local directory here. This bin directory has a whole bunch of different binaries that will do all sorts of different things. So you can set the theme there, you can set the wallpaper there, there's time zone things like, you can even do all sorts of different things like getting your IP address in the command line. You can zoom in and out using output scale, which is pretty cool. Like when I record videos, I do that. For example, right now I'm at output scale 2, basically 2x here for the video. But like if I were to go output scale 3, then that's going to be 3 times zoom, which is going to look, again, very small for the video here. Or maybe I just want to go to my native resolution. There it is there too. Although technically the font size gets zoomed in as well from a script that I ran ahead of time to record the video, but that's not here or there. But that's just a nice little way to get this going. So let's go back down to here. Quickly get set up. We'll go over that in a bit. But again, the fact here is for everything. Maybe before you even get to installing, I will mention here too that this is not a one-shot set and forget type of script. Like once you have all this stuff set up, you are meant to basically keep running it as needed. And there's a whole nice little, CLI here to get all sorts of different behaviors that you might want to do on a regular basis. So for example, let me just quit out of Vim here and then maybe close some terminals. Then we can take a look here at some of the things. So for example, I'll just make this a little bit smaller just so we're not bouncing around here. But let me actually just go to the home directory too. So my prompt isn't so wide here because again, the font size is so big. This .friedrice script here can be run anywhere. So if I just actually run this here, .friedrice, because it is going to be on your system path after installing it, then it is going to run through and try to install, actually let me make this one a little bit smaller and this one full screen for now. This is going to run through all sorts of different things here for you, detecting your environment and, make sure sudo works, which I will check here. And here in this case, it's going to warn you to let you know, hey, by the way, I'm going to install all these different packages here. Do you want them? And then, you would hit yes or no. So I'm going to hit yes to this one. And now it actually shows you the Arch News, by the way, here, scrolling up, and you can be like, oh, wow, interesting. Like maybe there's something I need to do without actually installing things. Because this is actually great. So normally if there's nothing new, then, nothing would pop up here, but go and check it out down here. We can actually see, oh, Qt6 base and purpose, like these packages here have some updates here. So we can choose to proceed with the installation and install them right now. Sure, let's do it. Or we can again hit no and cancel that out and it wouldn't do anything. Let's see. Now it's going to rip through all the rest and that's done. You're done. .friedrice is already set up and ready to go. Again, it's going to be super fast here because a lot of things have been installed, but I tried to make this script to be quite a bit idempotent, meaning if it doesn't need to do things, it'll skip doing those things. Like for example, I already have Node and Python installed here. All the different configs have already been symlinked. They're safe to overwrite. Installing different fonts here. It's already been done. Installing different themes here. For example, Tokyo Night and Groovebox, etc. They're all there. And then, installing things like CSH plugins and external scripts and Sudoers and udev rules, systemd, blah, 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 blah. It's all here, installing this, installing that, setting up Git, generating SSH keys and GPT keys if you need to, because in this case here, we didn't need to because I already have a key with this email. And then, it kind of gives you a nice little health check here at the end, giving you some stats about all the things here. And then, you can always restart your terminal if you made some changes. In my case, I didn't make any changes really, so I don't need to restart anything. A lot of this really, it's like, well, you could just source a file instead, but I kind of just say, open and close your terminal to make it easier for folks there. Besides just running this here too, you can actually do either skip system packages like this, which is kind of long to type, skip system packages, or you can just do capital S. I kind of like using that one with one dash there. This one will do the same thing. However, it will not install any system packages. So if you were to change some of your config files, or maybe you wanted to add something new, or I don't know, you just wanted to do something really quick, then you can do that. I do it all the time here just for re-symlinking a couple of different things. Because if we go back to here and take a look here at the help menu, it kind of gives you some tips here to be like, oh yeah, it's going to help you regenerate symlinks and configs and, do all sorts of different things without modifying packages here. You can also do a pull here, which would then pull in the latest changes from GitHub here, because when you run this command here, the .friedrice with no arguments, that is going to install everything based on your local copy. It's not going to go ahead and reach out to GitHub and download the latest things. It's on you if you want to pull that. Or there's an update command which will do a pull and then it actually runs this for you on your behalf. You can also do things like, diffing your config or just diffing everything in general. For example, if we go and do, .friedrice. And I will mention here too, there is a help menu, which is kind of nicely color coded here. You can see keeping up to date or what's different or what's new and all those things here. So what's different here is maybe you can do a diff config. So let's try that. So we do .friedrice and then we do diff config. Then that is going to, whoops, no flag, sorry. Then it's going to show you what's different between the example config that is committed up here on GitHub to whatever your config actually is. But in any case here, we can actually see a nice little delta diff of what's different between the default and yours. Yours are going to be what's in green here. Could be super handy, in case maybe I push an update to this file. Since it is going to be get ignored for your real one, then yeah, you wouldn't get that automatically here. And even the script does do some things to help you out. But yeah, there's a diff here showing some of the diffs there. Kind of nice little quick way. But we can also do a diff here too, which would then show you things that have changed between what you have locally versus what's up on GitHub. So I was like experimenting with using the Docker version of shell check and shell format here as well. This is not important. This run script is basically around managing the project itself. But yeah, you will see a diff there. So if you started modifying different files, you can very quickly just do a diff here and see what's different. It also shows you a nice little condensed diff there too. And then also there's another one called new commits here. This is not going to show anything here, but like, let's say that you do have, and I'll show you what these are in a bit when we actually have something in here. But yeah, in this case here, let's say that you've been using these .FriedRice setups here for a while, and you're not quite sure what's new. So you can just basically run new commits here, and it will find all the new commits that have been pushed up that you don't have. It's not going to modify your repo at all, but you can also just run the changelog command here too. It's not really an elaborate changelog, but it will give you a FCF powered way to basically go through all the different commits here. You can see what's been happening here. Of course, I'm zoomed in a lot, so a lot of the stuff looks pretty small, but you can always, drag this to be whatever. And then, yeah, you can resize things as needed on your end here. I use this all the time here. This is also, a way for you to fuzzy find things here too. For example, if I do a search for something like set theme, here's a couple of different commits that I had, back in the years here where I did have theme switching here all the way back in like 2021 or whatever. But yeah, this is a nice little way to search or get history there too. So going back to here, some of the other commands, actually, I guess technically we can just use the help menu. Yeah, we went over some of this stuff, new commits, changelog, etc. There's a debug command here as well. For example, if we were to run .FriedRice and then we were to run debug, then, in case you have an issue, something going wrong for, or unexpected here, you can open up a GitHub issue and, it even gives you some shortcuts here with all the different details about your environment, right? What kernel version you have and like the distro and blah, 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 if you're running an WSL or a container, if you have GUI enabled and all sorts of different details, as well as, a nice little dump here of your hardware and some information about your system. So yeah, you can just open up an issue like that. By the way, that little script I showed around the changelog to show you a diff of everything, if you actually go into any Git repository that you have and you run GL, this is another little script introduced by .FriedRice, you can actually just view a Git log of anything basically. So that's pretty nice. It's a very quick way to basically explore a Git repo. You can even do things like Control O to open that in a browser. For example, if I were to do Control O, that is going to open up this in a browser here. And if we take a look here, you can actually see that this has been opened up here right on GitHub. So that's pretty nice here. Quick way, very quick way to explore a Git repo. But yeah, there's a lot of little things like that in the binary directory, little things that help me in my day-to-day. For example, you can also just view the weather like this, and then boom, it's going to show you the weather for whatever town that you're in here. I may blur out my town, but whatever, I am in New York, it's not a big deal. And then little things like, what is a word of the day here? Give you the word of the day, all right, cool, gallivant, to go or travel to many different places for pleasure. And you can go and click this if you wanted to go learn more about it. There's tons of little things like that to play around with. But yeah, if we go back to here, let me go back and start closing out some stuff. And maybe go down to here, you can see what else is available to run. That's basically most of them. I mean, there is this local files here as well, which is kind of interesting. For example, if you were to run .FriedRice and then local files, then, this is one thing that is worth going over now. So the way you can customize a lot of these configs without needing to fork the repo or even like, fully overwrite or change a config file is a lot of different tools like Ghosty and Mako and, Z-Shell and Niri and all this. They have this idea of being able to overlay like snippets of a config over the real config, and then the snippet will win, basically the last config defined. So when, going into some details around that, like for example, if we were to go into NeoVim here and just go and take a look real quick. Well, actually, this is Ghosty, it's a little bit faster. So, here's the main Ghosty config file. Sure, there it is. But, you can also load in this local file if it happens to exist. And this local file will have specific things that are get ignored, notice there. And yeah, now you can customize what you want on your machine versus mine. So in this case here, I like to have different fonts for different recording sizes at different scale. So I just adjust the font size there, basically. Any Ghosty config item that you wanted to customize, if you wanted to override that or maybe add 10 different configuration options, you can just add them to your config.local here. They're not going to be get committed up, so you don't need to fork the repo. And then there, you have all of your .file stuff all in one location here. And just going back to, what I was doing before here, let me actually just run tmux so it's a little bit faster. I don't need to keep jumping around there. If you were to run this .friedrice local files, then you can kind of just very quickly view all the different local files that you have here, including your shell history. I don't want to hit down now because that's going to show all my different shell history, my real ones, but it's all there if you want to play around with it. But yeah, it's pretty nice. It's just a quick way to see what you made different versus the actual default. And yeah, if you want to have custom aliases, if you want to have different things in your profile, if you want to have different things for this, different things for that, it's all there for you to play around with. You can see even in my case here, the XTG local file, I have mine set up to different paths here. Like for example, I have my downloads directory on my NTFS mounted drive in data storage, but you probably don't have that. You might want to use just like capital D downloads in your home directory or something else. All that's configurable inside of here, inside of your configuration file that we took a look at a second ago. For example, those XTG directories here, there they are. That's why I have them set here. And then they get written out to disk wherever they need to be. I feel like this video can go on and on forever, but that's pretty much a 10,000 foot overview of some of the things that .friedrice can do. So we covered a lot of ground in here, but maybe now we can wrap things up with just installing it on a fresh system. So I just want to give you a heads up though, we are going to be doing this in a VM, but if you are running something like macOS or you want to use the command line version, then literally you just run this command and then follow the prompts. Now, when we do it on an Arch install here, you're going to be able to see what those prompts are in this video, even if you don't plan to use the full desktop environment. So stick around for that if you want to see it. But yeah, you can also try it in Docker here, copy paste this, copy paste that, and then you'll be able to see everything without modifying a single thing on your system here for the command line version. So with that said, I'm actually going to pause the video now, and then I'll meet you in a fresh Arch install. Okay, here we are in a brand new Arch installation. Now, don't freak out. I did skip a lot of steps here, but I did make a video in the past on creating a bootable USB drive. If you need a little bit of assistance on how to set that up, that will work on Windows, Mac OS, native Linux, etc. And then when it comes to actually running through the Arch installation itself, I did create a different video last week on that as well. So that will step through all the different steps together here, talking through all the different points there, and it will get things ready to go in the exact place that we are now, where I just logged into a very fresh Arch install setup here. And now it's time to install .friedrice. So in this case here, I am in a VM, so I'm just jumping to a different workspace here. But, in your end here, now you would just run the one bootstrap command here that we see under getting quickly set up here, on a fresh system here, by the way. There are links to different things here. The FAQ item also has, by the way, an entire written out set of instructions here for, creating a bootable USB drive, and then, all the different things during the Arch install here. But yeah, once you reach the bottom of there, you can be like, okay, cool, let me go and install it, basically, as mentioned here. So this is the command that you will need to run here. So basically, we're just going to curl down this bootstrap script here. And if you're not super comfortable with just taking this and running it, of course, you can go and check out the script here and, make a decision if you want to do that. So yeah, let's go back and start typing this here. So we would do bash, then we need to open up a subshell here, and then we are going to run curl. Make sure the parentheses and all that are really good here. So it is FSS and then L. And then here we need to put in the URL. So this is going to be HTTPS, and then it is raw GitHub user content, and then .com. And that's going to be nickjj.friedrice. And then master is the branch there, and then bootstrap is the script. So let's confirm that we actually have that right. So it is going to be, open up the subshell there. And then we have the curl flags, GitHub user content.com. And then nickjj.friedrice master bootstrap. And then going back to here, GitHub user content, blah, blah, blah. Yep, that looks good. So let's let it rip. And now, it's going to start walking you through some steps here. And this is the very first time you're going to be running sudo on your machine. So put in your password of whatever it happens to be. That's fine. Now it's going to install a couple of critical packages here. For example, git needs to be installed because you need to git clone things. So that's there. Nano is also going to be installed. So you can, take a look at the config file before we actually do some stuff here. But yeah, on the bottom of the screen here, it's asking you where you want to clone these to. So the default location here will just be in your home directory called, .friedrice. Feel free to put this wherever you want. If you want to change this later on, it's very easy. You can just rename the directory, and the .friedrice script will detect that if it needs to adjust anything else. So no worries here. This is not a point for procrastination. I'm going to choose the default here, .friedrice directory in your home directory. It's actually different on my main machine because I have all my open source work in a different directory, so I did customize it there. I'll show you that if you want a little bit after. But yeah, in any case here, I'm going to hit enter here to choose the defaults. I don't need to type anything because what you see in the square brackets there is going to be what's going to be set up. Cool. Then now it's going to ask you all sorts of next steps. What do you want to do? So, one, everything when is planned. That's really nice here. System is ready to roll. And you basically can answer 1, 2, or 3. So if you're running something like Mac OS, or if you're on WSL2 with Windows, and you want to just install the command line version, then you would just hit 1. However, if you want the full desktop environment with niri, etc., basically everything we just saw, then you would hit 2. Or you can hit 3 here, which will let you review which packages will be installed. And then you can have a chance to edit that config file that we briefly took a look at here before anything gets installed here. And then also in the magenta there, the purpley text on the bottom in the middle, you can also just Control-C this one and, browse that repo at your discretion. Because at this point, if you look at the very top there, it did clone .friedrice into that directory there successfully. And then, the rest of it is kind of just letting you know a heads up here. By the way, with option 3, in case you never used Nano, the text editor before, you can hit Alt period, like the dot, without shift, just Alt period, or Escape period to flip between both of these different files that we'll see in a bit here. You can also hit Control O to save it, Control X to exit. Again, those hotkeys for O and X are going to be on the bottom of Nano, so don't worry about them. Just remember, Alt period is going to let you flip between the files there. And then, it shows you some extra information there too, just letting you know what's going to happen. Basically, if you hit option 2, it's going to modify the config for you automatically to enable GUI mode. But let's do option 3 here, just so we can take a look here at some of the things. So Nano right now has been opened up. You can see the list of the default packages here. I'm using the arrow keys to go up and down, but notice a comment here, customize these in the config file instead of editing them here. So right now, you are in your real new .friedrice repository here. If you start making changes here, then you're essentially going down the path of modifying the Git history, if, there could be conflicts in the future, etc. So you might not override this one in your config file. But yeah, you can get an idea of all the things here that you might want to overwrite, remove things, add things, or, skip things, whatever you want to do basically here. But here's where, you can hit Alt period. It's going to flip me over to the config file. Now you can go down here, there's no syntax highlighting, unfortunately, right now in Nano. But you would go here to for example, if you wanted to add some extra packages. Again, you don't need to add them now. You can always add them afterwards, right? And then also skipping them, you can also skip them here, as needed. You can hit Alt-I to jump between these. Again, also Alt-Comma will actually technically go forward and back, but just Alt-I, since there's 2 files, you can toggle between them. So, you can take as much time or as little time as you need here to modify things. Now, I will say this is not a point to go off the deep end and spend 30 hours wondering oh, do I need that package or this one or whatever. You can just install all the default packages there, and then you can just remove the packages later and then add them to the skip list later, and then boom, they're never going to be installed again. So it's really your call in there. But let's say, you're done modifying things. I'm actually going to keep the defaults here. You can do Control O, you look at the very bottom of the screen now, those little up arrow carrots there, and then there's a write out second column, first one there. You can write out the file, you can save it, and then you can do Control X, bottom left there is going to close this one out. And then there's it goes, and you can close this one out as well because 2 files were open. And now it's going to reprompt you, what would you like to do next? And if you hit 3 again, then it'll do the same process, allow you to go back, review some of the files if you want, or now, let's say pick option 2, which is going to be installing .friedrice. Now, I want to mention too, if you are on something like Mac OS or a distro that doesn't support the graphical interface, then next to option 2, it's going to say OS not eligible. And if you try to pick it, it will just say, hey, by the way, sorry, you can't do that because, these things need to be true. And it's going to let you know some of the things that aren't true. But in our case here, I'm going to go and pick it. Then it's going to start doing all sorts of different things here, detecting your GPU. If you happen to get to the prepare GPU step and it says oh my God, your GPU isn't supported, it's probably just a little regular expression that needs to change. So feel free to open an issue on GitHub. It'll let you know what to do there. It's not going to be something that's going to be incompatible most likely with anything. But here, asking for your name, again, this will configure your get config here. So in my case, I'm going to go with Nick J. Why not? And it's a call out with these examples to one of my favorite 90s movies around computers. I'll let you figure that one out. But then, for the example, for the email, you can put whatever. If you put your email in incorrectly there, it will let you know, hey, by the way, that needs to be a valid email. It's only checking if there's an @ symbol and then 1 character either before and after the @ So it's not doing a crazy regular expression or anything like that. So I'll just do okcool.com, fine. And then, it's going to start installing all sorts of different packages. Now, I will mention this. Right now, it is going to auto-confirm and install all of these things because, you've given multiple opportunities here to go and take a look at the config file to modify stuff. So there's no confirmation step here, only on the first run, because you'd have to hit Y to confirm this. And then there's a couple of AUR packages where, you may need to confirm like 4 or 5 different times. And it's a little bit tedious to do that. And you figure on the first install, it's not too bad of an idea just to auto-confirm everything. But moving forward in the future, you will need to actually hit Y to confirm things to install them. And with that said, though, in the config file, there is an option to auto-confirm yes or no, basically 1 or 0. If you set it to 1, then it will always auto-confirm. I wouldn't recommend that just because on a live system, you do want to, basically see what's going to be installed before you actually install it, especially if you're using the AOR, especially if I want to go and check out the Arch News for backwards incompatible changes there. But yeah, on the first run, out of convenience, it will enable that for you just temporarily for that run. But yeah, now it's going to basically install a whole bunch of different packages here, which it's doing now. I don't want to ramble too long, but let's see what happens here. Again, just as a reminder, I am running this in a VM that has 2 CPU cores, and it's a 12-year-old CPU that's chugging along here. My network speed is okay, but this is basically network bound anyways. It might be faster on your machine. You can see here there's 820 things to go through. It's about halfway through. I'm actually just going to speed up the video here until we get to the next prompt. This may take a couple of minutes on your end, maybe like 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, now it looks like it's going to prompt me for my password. That's fine. I guess the sudo timeout was a little bit faster because we spent a lot looking at that config file. But yeah, now it's going to go on to install Walker, Elephant, etc. Remember, Elephant was that provider backend for Walker. That's completely normal. This will just run for basically a full 5 minutes. It's kind of funny because installing Walker itself takes longer basically than everything combined, but it is what it is. It does install a little bit slow, but it's not a big deal. It is a resource efficient tool. It's very fast when it's up and running. But yeah, from here, this is not hanging here. This is actually doing stuff in the background. So hang tight here. You don't need to enter anything. Everything is good to go. Actually, you can see those none things in the middle there. They're already been auto-accepted for you. But yeah, there it goes. It's going to start downloading some stuff and then extracting things. And yeah, I'll let you know when this is finished here. I'm going to pause the video for now. All right, there it goes, installing Elephant and Walker and WLRCTL here. Things are moving along, and we'll see what happens next. So this is really the longest part of the installation. Once all the packages are installed, then Mies is going to kick in and then install Node.js as well as Python. And the reason Node's being installed, by the way, is because there is a NeoVim plugin to do some really nice live reloading of Markdown files. I've done videos about that one in the past there, but it does require a Node environment. So that's all set up like that. If you get to this point here, don't worry, sources are ready, things are moving along, things are just churning in the background, but it's not providing any output here. That's just with the A package manager and what it's doing here. So just hang tight. And if you see things here like 1Password, Bitwarden, etc., don't worry about these. These are actually not getting installed, but they are downloaded here as part of the package installer. All right, there it goes. All the different Walker dependencies are now being installed. I told you, it's pretty interesting. This one takes longer to install than pretty much everything else combined. I wish it were faster, but it is what it is. Sweet, there it goes. So now that that's being installed here, it's going to move on to installing some programming languages using Mies. So in this case here, we can see Node.js is being installed, and now Python is being installed as well. And now we're at a prompt. So this is completely expected, nothing went wrong. But when it comes to installing configs here, DotFriedRice tries to be pretty cautious. For example, if a path is managed by DotFriedRice, then it's safe to overwrite, right? That's the assumption there because, hey, it's managed by DotFriedRice. Yes. But if it's not managed by DotFriedRice, like for example, it's a custom file by you, or maybe a custom system file that existed beforehand, then you will see this little yellow warning there up top, right? For that config, the confd pacman contrib file is not managed by DotFriedRice. And it's letting you know, hey, by the way, something destructive is about to happen. And then you have the option to either overwrite by hitting 1 or 2 to skip overwriting this one. And then the script is going to exit right now, by the way. This is not the option that you want to set, by the way. And then you can go assess the situation, right? Because you wouldn't want to override the script. And then, if the script tries to continue along and it doesn't have all the config files, then something will break maybe along the way. So in this case, exiting out makes sense there if that's something you wanted to do. But in this case here, it's completely standard to overwrite this file. Basically, by default, pacman contrib is going to keep 3 copies of all the different Arch packages that you have installed. And in my case, I kind of just wanted to include 2 copies instead. And, if you have 1,000 packages installed, installing an older version, 3 of them or 2 of them plus the current one is kind of a lot of hard drive space. It's not an insane amount, especially with hard drives being 1 terabyte, etc. But still, I just wanted to customize that file. So DotFriedRice will customize the pacman contrib here. So let's overwrite this file here. And if you're installing this on a fresh machine, you don't really have another terminal to open. So that text on the bottom there in the bright white is just letting you know, by the way, you can hit Control-Alt-F2 there to jump into TTY2, basically another way for you to log in without interrupting the script here. And you can go and check out the config file if you wanted to. We're not going to be doing that in this video here because, yeah, we're not going to be modifying it. But if it was something else in the future for some other reason, you can totally do that. Again, if it's already been installed and your desktop environment is set up or whatever, you wouldn't even need to do that because then you can just open up a second terminal window and check it out. So that's why I'm not demonstrating it here. But yeah, let's go and override this one here. Fine. And now it's going to install some fonts here, nerd fonts, whatever you need, basically. Now it's going to install all sorts of different things, Z shell plugins, external scripts there, making some configuration changes. And now it's prompting you for your password again, because we're going to be changing our shell over to Z shell. And then, yeah, it's almost done installing some tmux things. And one last prompt here for your GPG key. Make sure you enter in this correctly. If you do it incorrectly, they don't match, it's no problem. It'll just let you know, and then you can re-enter them. And then, yeah, this will be wrapped up in a second or two. And that's it. So here you can see some fast fetch here, some information. You can see I'm actually running this in KVM here with, yeah, a little bit less specs than what was before here. And it's just letting you know now, hey, by the way, all the way on the bottom there, since GUI Linux was set to 1, you'll want to reboot your system. So you can do systemctl reboot. Also, it's not a bad idea to reboot your system if you're using the command line version as well, or at the very least, at least log out and log back in because, certain things about your shell, like in the profile file, are going to be edited, and those things might only get executed one time on a boot. So let's go to systemctl here, and then we'll just following the prompts here, systemctl, and then we can do a reboot. So let's do that. Now your machine's going to reboot, make sure that you remove your USB stick, etc. And in the case here, I'm using grub in the VM, but if you're using systemd following along with that video before, that's totally fine and normal. But yeah, now it's going to boot up. Maybe if you encrypted your drive, it'll ask you for the encryption password now, and then you can enter that in here. I didn't encrypt my drive here in the VM, and then we can just log in like normal. So here, username and password. See if I entered it in right. Cool, did. So now things are gonna go and boot up, and you're gonna have your fresh DotFriedRice all set up and ready to go. If I hit the hotkey here to change around the backgrounds, just like we saw before, they're all going to work here. Yeah, you're all set up and ready to go. Now, if you actually go back to the README file down here, so let's do this because it's important. If you go down here to the very bottom, it will let you know, like, how do you get started with the desktop environment? So in this case here, it just gives you a heads up on how to explore some very common things you might want to do. Open a terminal with Mod-Alt-T, browser with B, or mod/ there to show all the hotkeys. Now, these are things you'll probably want to do depending on what type of machine you have. But yeah, if you're connected to Wi-Fi there, you want to click the Wi-Fi icon up here. I don't have a way to demonstrate that because I literally don't have an adapter to show that on this machine. I do on my laptop. Again, I tried to overlay those screenshots before. But yeah, you can go and configure your network there. And then also Bluetooth devices, maybe you want to check that out too. You can just go here, click that, configure those as well. You might want to go to something like YouTube or play some audio. Basically, it's up to you. You can also go to the wire mix up here. You can click this icon. I'm not in the VM anymore, but I'm just showing you here. Yeah, you can go here, make sure that the correct devices are set. For example, this is what I want set here. So there your sound is set up. I mentioned here about rmpc before, about playing music. You can also run DFR. Actually, this used to be DT when the repo was named .files, but now that's actually been changed. So I will update this in the README file right after this video. But yeah, anyways, you can go and start modifying whatever you need here based at your discretion here, because it is your new system to go and play around. So with that said, this video was ridiculously long. If you have any questions about any of this, please leave a comment here on YouTube. If you run into any issues, maybe something doesn't work as expected, feel free to open up an issue here. I'll definitely check that out. If you want to open up a PR because you have an enhancement, maybe you want to add a new theme or some cool feature, I'm certainly open to collaborate on something like that. If you have questions about the project, there is a discussion forum here. With that said, if you liked the video, please give a thumbs up. It really does help a lot. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.